Wine tasting is really a simple thing. You just open the wine, taste it, and decide if you like it or not. But despite this simplicity, it's really surprising how many new wine enthusiasts feel bewildered or even intimidated by the prospect of actually going to a real wine tasting. And that's really easy to understand because there are so many things to think about. It's actually hard to keep track of it all. And the solution is a wine tasting sheet. Wine tasting sheets have three purposes. First, they remind you of the things to observe when tasting a wine. Second, they let you write down what you observe. Third, they help you remember your impressions of particular wines. Wine tasting sheets should be stored in a notebook or purchased as part of a wine tasting journal, and that lets you remember them forever. Tasting wine involves the senses of sight, smell, and taste, and wine tasting sheets help you make observations using those senses. Wine tasting's done in 7 simple steps. Open the bottle, observe the wine for its color and clarity, smell the wine's aromas, take a small sip of the wine, leave the wine in your mouth to let the flavors develop, swallow or spit it out, and finally make notes about what you experienced. Wine tasting sheets help you organize your observations and record your impressions. Whether you like or dislike a particular wine, it makes a whole lot of sense to remember it. All wine tasting sheets provide spaces to record the name of the wine producer, the region or country of production, and the vintage year. Some of them have additional information that's useful to remember, like the date you tasted the wine, the alcohol percent, the residual sugar percent, and the universal product code if it's available, and of course, the price. Then, with this basic bookkeeping out of the way, it's time to get on with it and actually taste the wine. So, pour a small amount of wine into a glass and hold it against a white background. The 3 main things to look for are excessive sediments, the hue, and the color depth. Now, sediments are little particles of stuff floating around in the wine, and they're generally considered to be a bad thing to see in a wine glass. The hue is the color of the wine. There's some variation in the choice of colors, and that's where a wine tasting sheet comes in handy. It gives you some different hue choices. A good selection of hues includes greenish, yellow, gold, purplish, ruby, red, brown, pink, orange, and copper. Now, the sheet you use may have more or less. It really doesn't matter. Just have some basics to work with. The color depth is the intensity of the color. Some wines may be nearly transparent, and others may be opaque. Record that on your sheet. Next, consider what you smell. The aroma of the wine is what it smells like. It's best to start with a simple choice of smells like woody, earthy, pungent, chemical, floral, fruity, spicy, herbal, and nutty. There are many other specific smells like grapefruit or oranges or citrus, but when you get started, stick to the basic categories. You should find them on your wine tasting sheet, and you'll add more as you gain more experience. When you hold the glass to your nose and smell it, also make note of whether you think it's a weak, moderate, or strong smell, and note that on your wine tasting sheet. Next, consider what you taste. Now, first take note of the sweetness of the wine, and that depends on the residual sugar that's in the wine. Select from exceptionally sweet, like you'll find in a dessert wine, to medium sweet, to dry, to very dry. And dry is just another word for not sweet at all. The wine tasting sheet should give you a place to record your impressions. Next, notice the acidity and tannins in the wine. Now, I put these together because at first it may be difficult to distinguish between acidity and tannins. But here's a hint. Tannins are found only in red wines, and they tend to make your mouth feel dry. That's not the same dry that we're talking about when it comes to the sweetness. It actually feels like your mouth is dry. In red and white wines, look for a tart or bitter taste in your mouth, and that's acidity, particularly when you experience it on the sides of the tongue. You may like a wine that's more acidic or one that's less acidic. That's totally up to you. And later, as you gain experience, you'll be able to clearly distinguish acidity from tannins. But on the beginning, just focus on whether you taste a bitter taste or a smooth taste, and put that on your wine tasting sheet. The flavor intensity is how strong the flavor is in your mouth. When you taste the wine, The flavor will change as you first sip it, then swish it around in your mouth, and finally swallow. And there's even an aftertaste. Pay attention to all of these flavor variations. It may be weak at the beginning, but leave a strong aftertaste. Make note of it. Weak, moderate, and strong are really all you need to worry about at first. Like aromas, there's a wide variety of flavors. One of the best characterizations for beginners is from Oz Clarke. His basic flavors for red wines are juicy, fruity, silky, strawberry-ish, blackcurrant-ish, spicy, herby, and earthy. For white wines, his flavor categories are bone-dry, tangy, nutty, ripe, aromatic, and rich sweet. When you start, see what you can taste and record it on your wine tasting sheet. You may not get it perfect the first time, but in time you will be able to distinguish flavors more accurately, and then you can add more and more and more flavors. Use your wine tasting sheet to remember if your overall impression is that you like or dislike the wine, and if you'd buy it again. If you don't like it now, you probably won't like it in the future. But if you do like it now, it's going to be fun to taste it again and again and discover what you taste the second and third time around. And it's usually fun to keep the label of the wine with your wine tasting sheet, particularly for memorable wines or special occasions. In some cases, this is going to make a lot of sense and it's going to be easy to do. In others, it just isn't practical because you can't get the labels. So when you can, and when it's really important, save the label. And finally, store the wine tasting sheet in your journal or notebook where you can refer back to it at a later time. It's really fun to go through this and remember occasions when you were tasting wines and remember what the wines tasted like. You can get started with wine tasting sheets really easily by getting a free printable wine tasting sheet at wineswonderland.com. And you don't even have to leave your email. Just go to the site, wineswonderland.com, and in the upper right-hand corner in the search, put tasting sheets. Just search for that term, and you'll find it right away. Even easier, click on the link below this video. Thanks a lot, and we look forward to seeing you in our next Wine Basics video.